Welcome. Thank you for attending today's presentation. And I'm standing right in front of you, but it doesn't matter, right?
I can move.
I mean, that's probably my worst side, right? Okay. Okay. All right. We have had the pleasure of spending a couple of days with all of you. So again, thank you for being here now, and thank you for spending time with us previously. Thank you to those of you that filled out survey work. We appreciate all of your thoughts and ideas. That's what helped us put our heads together and come up with something that we think will hopefully be a menu of ideas for you to consider. This downtown visit, we did a lot of things. We had a survey that we sent out. We're going to talk about that a little more specifically in just a few minutes. We actually reviewed some materials. We just had some stuff back home where we went to your website. We did different little investigative work to find out a little bit more about you. We had a fantastic driving tour of the city. I have to say it was a much bigger city than I realized. As we were going around and around and around, there were so many different amenities that we were shown. It's fantastic. We had a walking tour of the downtown. We were shown different historic buildings. We were shown projects that are in the works. We were shown projects that need to be worked on as well too. We interviewed people. We actually interviewed almost 100 people during the 2 days that we're here. And these were either structured interviews or just pop-in visits. We, in between visits and interviews, we just hit the street and we just walked into businesses, walked into stores, and I have to tell you, it was a great treat. Your business people have such a great attitude. They were happy to see us, whether we were shopping or not, which I have to admit, I helped your economic development, just a tad bit. So, and it was a very enjoyable experience, and a number of us have bags taken back home. But you've got some business people that you should be very, very proud of. They're proud of their stores, they're proud of the community, they're proud of their product, and they were very anxious to serve us. We weren't just something they said hi and walked away. They actually communicated with us and shared, what they were thinking. We had, as I said, all of those conversations. We spent a lot of time eating. Too much time eating. We're going to have to go back home and exercise a lot. We learned a little bit about the history of your community, not only like in places like this in the restaurant, where on the walls were historic photos. A lot of the places that we went into were telling the story of your history. And then, of course, we did do a little bit of that shopping. I should back up for just a minute and tell you who I am. I'm a member of a 5-member team that was here for 2.5 days. I'm currently the Assistant State Coordinator for Main Street, Iowa. And that is actually a program that Anamosa was involved with. From 1990 through 1998, you were part of that state program. I have been a Main Street Director, a Chamber Director, a Tourism Director, Economic Development Director in cities in the state of Iowa. So I've sat in all of these chairs, which makes my life very interesting. I've been able to pursue my passion of downtown revitalization for like 25 years now. So it gives us great pleasure to come to communities like this and share our experiences that we've had all over the state of Iowa and bring them to you. So why is downtown important? Why are you even bothering with this? There's a number of reasons. It is the economic health of your community. If you were to wake up tomorrow and suddenly downtown would be gone, you'd be in a whole different place. And vice versa. Downtown, if you suddenly lost all your industries, all those things surrounding you, you would be at a loss. You need each other. You need each other for economic development. It is a public-private partnership. Downtown is just not for the downtown people, the downtown building owners. You are all stakeholders in this. Think about that, what we have downtown and what we have outside of downtown. It describes your quality of life. It is something about local pride. It shows how proud you are and who you are. And it demonstrates your community history. And it is a key to recruitment. My guess is when the hospital's hiring, the school's hiring, anybody's hiring, they're going downtown, they're checking things out. And that could make or break their decision. So that downtown is extremely important, not only to your current citizens, but those that you aspire to becoming to your community and becoming citizens or residents. Healthy downtowns equal healthy communities. You are, the downtown, one of the major employers. We do have a lot of people working downtown. It is a business incubator. Sometimes it's a pop-up store. Sometimes it's somebody just kind of getting their wheels wet and going, okay, can this business make a run for it? And they started out in a smaller space, and you've had that happen right here. Started out small, and like, whoa, things flew. So people had to move into a bigger space. Many independent businesses, which is wonderful. That's what makes you unique. Visitor attraction. That came up big. That came up really big. Visitor attraction. You know, you got Grant Wood, you've got the Motorcycle Museum, you've got art museums, you've got all kinds of things that people want to come here for, where even if they don't live here, they're going to come and visit you. They're going to see what you have to offer. And that came up very high in survey work and in conversations with us. Public investment, that infrastructure is in your downtown. That's why we say concentrate on that city center. You've already got all the amenities there. Now we got to fix up the buildings, but you got the basics there. If you're taking a big piece of farmland, you got to start from scratch. There's a whole bunch of stuff you got to put in the ground before you can even think about putting up a building. It does reduce sprawl, protects the property, and it's a community space, and it should be a pedestrian-friendly environment. And you have a very pedestrian downtown. I always got my steps in here, so it's like walking up and down the streets. I got 10,000 steps plus every single day, which is good for me because of all the food we were eating. Some characteristics of a successful downtown. As you can see up there, there's a big chart. This is actually a tool we use at the community meeting. And there are a number of different categories ranging from your space, do we feel safe, do we have a thriving and diverse business community? What happened with this, we rated everything from 1 to 5. And I shouldn't say we because it was you that were in attendance that rated. So 1 was poor, 5 means fantastic, great, perfect. What happened was out of those 67 boxes that could be filled in, 45 of them had 2s or 3s. Not great. But you know, that confirms the fact that you need to be working together, that you invited us here because there's a situation here that we need to improve. So everybody's recognizing together that, okay, these things are on the plate, we need to take a serious look at them and make some changes and make some things happen. What did, the cultural aspects one, that one kind of blew us out of the water. Those were almost all 4s and 5s. You've got a lot, you've got your library, you've got the art, you've got the museums, the theater, things that are happening downtown that are cultural. So that was your category that just was just fantastic. So it tells us that there's opportunity, there is room for growth. It's up to you though. And remember that no decision is a decision. So if when we leave here today, you do nothing, you aren't making a decision. Jeff?
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Geertz. I'm the Special Projects Manager at the Iowa Economic Development Authority, which really means I just get all of those other duties as assigned opportunities sent my way. And this is one of the fun ones for me, to get out in the communities and explore and learn about your downtown and your history. And to learn about that downtown and history, actually through the community, offered up a survey prior to us coming to the community. And we had about 122 responses to that survey, asked about 7 questions. We looked at those survey responses, and interestingly, once we got here, we compared them with some of the data that had been collected in a 2002 downtown plan and a 2010 vision for Anamosa and downtown opportunities, and there's a lot of similarities between our survey results and what some of these previous efforts have found as well. So I'm just going to briefly go through these very briefly, but more details on the survey responses will actually be in the full report that we provide to all of you, probably about 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know if you mentioned that at the beginning, but there is a follow-up report, and you'll have a lot more detail about the survey responses in there. The first question we asked is, what are downtown's greatest strengths? And Darlene already touched on a few of these. The variety of the stores, the unique shops, some of these new businesses, and some of these long-term businesses really came out at the top with strengths, as well as the historic buildings, the facades, that architectural history. There were a lot of responses in that category, or from that perspective, that's one of the great strengths of downtown, and we would agree. Your streetscape, we'll talk a little bit about that later, again, is an excellent strength. Parking and just the access to buildings. Downtown is very easy to navigate. And then the restaurants and bars. And while Darlene was shopping, I was eating my way through downtown, and it was very good. When we asked the question, if you could change one thing about downtown, there was a little bit about more businesses, greater business variety, but a lot of them really emphasized just facelifts, cleanups to the building, improving the storefronts. I think that was well over half to maybe 60% of the responses just fell into these top 2 categories of those 120 some responses we received. And there you kind of see a word cloud of what we were seeing in the responses. When we asked, how does uptown make you feel, or downtown make you feel? Sad, blah, kind of neutral, no feeling. But there were some others. There's hopeful came out. Love that small town feel. Welcoming and inviting. But when we asked, how do you want downtown? So this is, how does it make you feel today? When we ask how you want it to make you feel, welcoming, friendly, opening, inviting, warm, bustling, vibrant, thriving, all those kind of things. I think the very first survey respondents said like a Hallmark movie. that probably pretty much describes a Hallmark movie. So, and there you can see the word cloud as well. Sometimes what was interesting here with the survey responses is by far and away, it was kind of focused on these 2 areas. You really knew, at least the respondents really knew how they want downtown to feel. Some communities, it's all across the board, and we can't really get a good sense. Here, that was not an issue at all. What would improve the business climate downtown? Fixing up the buildings was by far and away the number 1 response. Number 2 was some more variety, specialty shops. And that kind of ties into cleaning up and filling those storefronts as well, which we had heard in a couple of the previous responses. What type of uptown or downtown businesses would be most successful? Almost everywhere we go, it seems like brewery always ends up at the top these days. That was not the case here. There's a lot of focus on movie theater, ice cream with arcade. In restaurants, as you saw before, the restaurants was the strength. Here, the comments were more about maybe a nicer or upper scale restaurant, or just more ethnic type of restaurants, or quick lunch type of opportunities came up. And then there was quite a few also talking about just more family activities, family related type of businesses, fun business kind of things. And then the last question we actually asked is, which public amenities do you think are most needed uptown? And people could answer one of these, or they could choose all of them. They could have multiple responses here. But 2/3 of the respondents noted places for kids is one of the things they think is most needed downtown. And then parking. And parking was a pretty big issue here, bigger than, it always comes up in every community, but here it probably really is an issue. And we're going to talk about that some more later. But keep the parking and the places for kids in mind, because we're going to touch on those in several instances here in the next few minutes. Dennis.
All right. So we'll start to get into some of our recommendations based on what we heard from you. And signage. Someone said in the groups, all roads lead to downtown, and that's kind of true. But sometimes we need to be encouraged that we're on the right road. You know, when I came in from the highway, I almost stopped at the fire station because I thought, oh, surely I should be downtown already. So this is going to show you 3 different sequences of how people arrive to downtown. I would suspect the most heavily traveled route is from the southwest, coming up from Cedar Rapids. So I need to know before I get to the exit, I need to make my decision. I'm going to go downtown, so I need a teaser. I need to know when I get down at the bottom of the exit ramp that I go left. There's some blue signs that say tourism. There's a few signs, but they're pretty weak. They're not really exciting. They don't really compel me to say this is a different type of destination. So are there opportunities to create some more interesting graphics? And then once I start to get into the residential neighborhood and I still can't see something that makes me think it's downtown's ahead, just tell me, keep going this way. Downtown's this way. You're going the right direction. When I hit an icon, like a fire station, link an icon with your sign. Just think about how many times you say, when you get to the library, keep going straight, or get to the library, turn left. So put another sign near where the fire station is. It also links your civic improvements with your wayfinding. And that's a nice view of the valley too. So keep going straight. I come back up the hill, and when I'm at the library, it was still a little vague to me, you know, should I turn left at the library, or do I keep going? So yeah, keep me going. I get to the intersection, that's the key decision point for most people. Again, give me a really strong clue and give me something visual from that corner that I can see 2 blocks down the road that, yeah, that's downtown. So maybe that's a wall mural or a graphic or a real distinct landmark. Coming in from the northeast, coming in from Dubuque, again, let me know before so I can talk to my wife and say, are we going to go downtown or not? You know, give me some lead time. I turn, I go down. Am I going the right direction by the school? Yep. Am I going the right direction when I pass by the entrance to the high school? Yep. When I hit Fountain Park, am I still, you know, not lost? Yep. And then I hit that key marker there, that key corner. So it gets a blue star. We're not sure what that is yet, but it needs to be very powerful visually.
Dennis, just a quick comment too about 151. They have a historic designated district, so brown signs need to be on your radar screen. DOT does those. They
DOT
love to
signs.
do those.
Yeah, good point. And there are some kind of neat signs that have that American Gothic logo thing. They've got some text on it, I think. I couldn't read it because I was just going too fast. So that's a great start, and I love the American Gothic logo, but maybe there's some more literal information that go along with those. And then don't forget people coming, even if it's not like travelers from an hour away, you do have a lot of visitors at the state park, so be sure you're really linking that state park experience up to the downtown. And so you've got a very nice stone sign down there, which really leverages your stone heritage, and that's what you're known for, in my mind, as one of the things. You get up at the corner, and you got a nice piece of public art. Do you have a slide for that? I think we're going to talk about it a little bit. Nice piece of public art there. I love it. Just literally give me a clue that says downtown's this way. And then you can see kind of the green stars. Those are icons, destinations within your community. Be sure you're linking your downtown with these other destinations. So I can always, if I'm down at a softball tournament, I'm always aware that downtown is just a few blocks away, or if I'm at the courthouse or whatever it might be. So some specific signage ideas. The Starlighters sounds like you have a lot of pride in this theater program, and there's the shows are what, 4 to 6 times a year, maybe something like that. So theaters are challenging in that for a week. They're high energy, lots of things going on, but the rest of the time they're big, dark, empty boxes. So think about, instead of black windows, and maybe we're just catching on a bad day when we saw the black windows. It's real easy. 3M films can be applied to the glass. Maybe you take some pictures of people having fun building sets and doing rehearsals and make me want to sign up to participate as well as be an audience member. So that's one idea to really enliven that storefront. When you talk about signage, the first level I first started talking about was sort of the highway community arrival. It's a purely vehicular experience. And once we get downtown, we still have a vehicular experience we're trying to identify. This was an interesting shot to me. I got here early, and I always look for a coffee shop so I can have a coffee, sit down, and kind of, scope out the downtown. So I drove downtown to the far end, turned around, drove back. It's like, well, there's no coffee shop here. I guess I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And then
the same thing.
Yeah, you did the same thing.
Same thing.
And then for some reason I went back and I finally saw the coffee shop. So this is a good lesson. The restaurant, even though it's an eatery, I don't know what they serve. I know the name because I was there, but I couldn't tell from the sign. But it's enough. It's enough of a clue that it looks like it's going to be a nice dining experience. They took some care with the font. But the rest of the uses, a wonderful boutique place, but I can't tell from my car that that's what's there. So really think about the vehicular experience. And usually it's a sign that's on the facade, on the transom where it's easily visible. The next layer down then is the pedestrian. And you all had some good comments about this. If I'm at the antique shop, I want to walk out the front door when I'm done and go, where am I going to go next? Oh, I see right down there's something I want to check out. So think about these blade signs. And I know blade signs have kind of been a negative here. We always recommend them highly. So they have to be designed right, they have to be safe, they have to be at least 9 feet above the sidewalk or else people will try to dunk on them. It's a really effective tool and they're very cost effective. We had a conversation with the high school teacher who's talks about the plasma cutter. And it's just a piece of aluminum that can be cut out with the plasma cutter and some paint, and it's a really effective way to do signs. So I grabbed a picture of a student playing for the Warriors and just cut it out, paint it blue, and the kids, when we talked to them at the high school, they said, we need an A Sports apparel shop, so that's why I put that in there. So they were pretty smart in terms of what might work here. And the Grant Wood Gallery, I couldn't tell it was a Grant Wood Gallery except for the tiny little sign. So maybe there's a translucent image of a Grant Wood painting that's set on the window. So it sort of provides some sun protection from the art, but gives you a peekaboo of literally what's happening inside. And then the other pedestrian level type of signage is not literally signage, it's showing your product, and that's the most effective as well. So good for you. A lot of places put a lot of words that block product in the windows. We don't like that. We want to see product. And so there were some really great examples of nice window displays. Even the motorcycle, you're not selling motorcycles, but it was something interesting to look at. I'm going from one place to the next. Give me something fun to look at. A challenge on most of these is it's really bright outside, and so you really need to get some very bright spotlighted lights on this face of that product so that this is brighter than the outside. And that can literally be a trip to Menards and $80 and some electrician time to put them in.
Or Tyson's.
Big impact. Or Tyson's, excuse me. Yeah, well, go local. And last night when we went to the bowling alley, some of these really looked great because the lights were on even though it was like 9 o'clock. So amen, keep that up. Oh, and these were some doodles we did with the high schoolers, again, with the plasma cutter. So, again, the Penitentiary Museum, don't underestimate a little icon like that in your downtown that leverages that experience. Or the Motorcycle Museum, you don't need a lot of words to describe, where you need to go. In fact, it's kind of nice. It's sort of like, I wonder what that means. I'm going to go check it out. So don't get hung up over being too literal. We also talked about banners can be real expensive, and they wear out and they fade. Sometimes the permanent banner cut out of a piece of aluminum and painted is a nice, fun way to do it as well. It's more permanent. The high schoolers also said, can we spruce up some of the murals that have been done in the past, the fairway facade and such. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there. Oh, and I think when I met with the people in the coffee shop, I said, yeah, just go find a giant teapot or a giant coffee cup. And so here's kind of not, this is more expensive than I had in mind, but anyway. An icon says a lot, right? We see a barbershop pole, we know exactly, I'm gonna get a haircut. I don't need any words. If I see a giant teapot or coffee cup, I know exactly what it's gonna be. I didn't introduce myself, did I?
No, you didn't.
Oh, my bad. But you probably all met me in some form or another, but Dennis Reynolds, I own Reynolds Urban Design. So I get to work with these folks on various small town projects just like yours. What I really love about it is early in my career I did a lot of national, international experience. My grandfather had the small town hardware store when I was a little kid. It was a great experience growing up. So I love bringing those two experiences back together at this stage in my career. So thanks for including me.
Thank you.
He'll be back.
Yeah. Another theme that we created from the comments, everyone said, was attitude. Attitude. Think about what comes out of your mouth. Think about the things that you hear. Think about your body language. All of those matter. Some of the things we heard. What's missing here is a vision and a partnership. You don't know who to ask. Who does what? The new people coming in is what our ACE is. We used to have a good old boys club, but most of them aren't here anymore. We're stronger if we work together. The way to herd cats is to throw out some cat food. Sometimes I feel like we are working against each other. We tried that. We heard that often. And even if people said, but we tried that, can we tweak it? You know, maybe we tried it 30 years ago, folks. You know, you're killing volunteers that have these ideas with the, we tried that. Give them a chance to speak up and talk about their ideas, because odds are they've got some new ideas, some fresh ideas that will fit what you've got here currently. We heard a lot, the glass is half empty. That's an attitude. We want our glass to be half full. We start doing things, but many times we just don't finish. And we heard that really often as well. People get excited, like they kind of have for our visit, but things don't get finished. We're going to check back with you, though, to make sure you're doing something, because we're not going to be that 2002 report or that 2010 report sitting on a shelf. That's not what we're here for. We want you to do something. We heard they need to take care of it. They. And we complain. Well, in Jefferson, a group of 47 women created a Why Not Us LLC. They took a building that got flooded out. It was a tea room that was popular, always having people come into town, locals eating there, congregating there, socializing there. And when that got flooded out, they had a big loss. So these 47 women put $5,000 each into the pot, working with the city, and Nick's going to talk a little bit about that, where the city was involved with some of the stabilizing of the building, but these women are going to bring that tea room back. They got tired of hearing they. Why not us? We need to be pointing the finger our direction and jumping in. Downtown looks tired and empty. Some volunteers are doing everything. And we do hear that a lot. And volunteerism is a whole other thing that maybe we could come back and actually work with you on. That's something we can't tackle in 1 minute. Sometimes I feel like we are working against each other. I think we've already said that one, and we've tried that. And there are so many negative people. That was kind of sad for us to hear. And yet we heard, I appreciate historic buildings, and that's what you've got here in Anamosa, yours and only yours. We have strong opinions and we have strong voices. And that can be either a blessing or a curse, depending upon what you say and what you do with those words. We need to do something sooner rather than later. And our 5-member team would agree with that 100% plus. You're kind of on this teeter-totter. Something's gotta happen. If you wait much longer, your destiny is gonna be determined not by your choice. You have a chance to determine your destiny. We are a bedroom community, and that's kind of a plus and a minus. That can be looked at two different ways. There are can-do attitude people in this community. You've got them there. We just kind of need to make that ask and get them involved. There are a lot of passionate people wanting to help. We need to raise the bar and showcase the positive. We're not going to worry about some of these negative things that are being said. We're going to speak loudly, positively. We're going to raise that bar, and we're going to have to change our words, our body language, and our attitudes.
You know, I was gonna slip in real quick to these diagrams, reinforce what you were saying. Downtowns are hard, and you have their cycles. Development has its cycles in towns, and so don't get too down when things are down. There's always gonna be the ups and downs, but we wanna keep that progression going. When you are struggling, pull in the wagons, concentrate, marshal the resources, get focused and singular. I think you made a good comment in one of our meetings about that. And then push ahead with focus. And then the third one that we're gonna notice an emphasis today is there's low cost and high cost. There's short amount of time and long amount of time. And there's this minimal impact and high impact. So we're gonna try to give you some big circles that don't cost a lot and don't take a lot of time. And as well as some smaller sort of low-hanging fruit, because we think there's some time-sensitive issues that you're dealing with.
Hi. Hi. So my name is Nick Sorensen. I'm the Building Zoning Official, Code Enforcement, Special Projects Coordinator for the City of Jefferson. Jefferson's about 1 hour northwest of Des Moines. Our population is 4,200, so minus prisoners, very comparable. So you can about imagine why I got invited to come here today. We're very comparable. So I'm kind of the building guy. My background is, grew up in the southwest Iowa community of 780 people. When my grandpa retired, he said, we gotta put the boy to work, and started helping him on old historic buildings. From there, I went on to college, and I became a police officer. I was a police officer for 13 years. I've been doing this for 5 years now for the City of Jefferson. So I'm here tasked, obviously, to talk about the buildings. You guys have wonderful buildings. I look at my town, I look at your town, I'm jealous. You guys have great bones here. Your architecture, your assets that you have in your downtown are tremendous, and that should be celebrated. So buildings, they can be considered assets, and they definitely can be considered liabilities. We're going to talk about common problems, the zoning requirements, vacant building registry, and building codes. So assets, they already exist. So Darlene touched on it, water sewer's there, you don't have infrastructure to worry about. These buildings were designed to last with the proper maintenance. And there's history there, there's a story to tell with each building that collaboratively tells your story, your city's story. They definitely have that curb appeal with a little bit of sprucing up. With the density of these buildings in your downtown area, you kind of create a nucleus. You know, the restaurants feed off another, retail feeds off one another. And then if you utilize that second story for living space, those bodies are going to go down there and help feed that as well. Liabilities, they are scary. When I first started doing this, I was extremely intimidated by these buildings, and don't think for 1 minute I'm not still intimidated by these buildings. Every single building, you're going to find something different than the last one you worked on. Years of deferred maintenance creates expensive repairs. So a lot of building owners purchased these buildings that had issues that were created 50 years before they purchased them, right? Deferred maintenance caused this. lack of attention to just a little bit of tuck pointing then turned into some major problems. Then there's improper repairs. Historic brick also has historic mud in between, right? So these softer bricks, some people don't know you have to have softer mortar in between. You put a harder mortar in the center there, boom, you just pop the front face off your brick. That brick, that's the waterproofing agent. Okay, so they created its own problem just by lack of education. It was well intended. They knew they needed a tuck point. They just didn't do it appropriately. Slip covers, floor coverings, drop ceilings. So all of these with a slip cover, that's kind of your transom area that's been enclosed. They did that back in the day for energy efficiency. Absolutely, I can understand why they did it. There's new products out there now that allow to bring that light back in that are more energy efficient, but what those slip covers do is they hide problems. You don't know what's behind there. There could be a steel lintel across there that's rusting, that's shifted 2 inches one way or another, that is transversely going up the front of your building, and you have a major issue that you don't even know about. The floor coverings, that's just gonna probably hide asbestos tile, 9x9 tiles, and then you get dug into there and now all of a sudden, oops, I've got a big problem, I have to get an abatement crew in here. People think it's a high expense issue. It is, but it's not the end of the building when you add everything up. Drop ceilings, a lot of times what I've seen, if you look around, I think one of the restaurants we were in, that historic tin ceiling just completely in place was just beautiful. I can't believe how pristine it was. I thought personally that they found refurbished and put up there, but it was still preserved by that drop ceiling. That's hiding that character. And then with all these issues on top of one another, move-in ready is extremely excessive overhead for startup business. They are not move-in ready. Most of these vacancies are not move-in ready. So how are you going to recruit a business to come into something that they're going to have to put excessive amounts of money into? Banks aren't going to loan that money to that individual for a startup business. So before you want to do business recruitment, let's get them some viable spaces. So common issues with these buildings, roofing. 90% of the time on these buildings, it starts with that one drop of water. The way these buildings are designed, they say a flat roof. They're all pitched to the back, but what it does is it creates potbelly with freeze-thaw and freeze-thaw. Eventually that finds its way through, and eventually that roof finds its way into the second story floor, then it finds its way into the first story, then it finds its way into the basement. One drop of water is what that starts with. Cornice disrepair. So with that roofing, the way they did it back in the day, they just kind of ran it up onto the parapets. The parapet's what extends above the roof line, and it terminated. And then over the years, with more tar and tar and tar, it pulls away. Well, then that water leaks through the back side of the brick, and then it starts to wear through, and all that cornice, that decorative feature, is now getting a freeze thaw, and it's going to pop those brick. And now you got to worry about bricks coming down on your head. Improper or lack of tuck pointing, we already touched on that. You know, if you own one of these and you have a corner building, it's hard to do, but you have to set aside money each year to do some masonry repair. Otherwise, in 10, 15 years' time, you're looking at a $30,000 repair job that could have been just over the years, $1,000 a year. I need to address it here, I need to address it there. Improper window treatments. When I say improper window treatments, I'm talking more so on the second story. Great big, beautiful window that used to be there, let's condense it down to a nice little double hung window so I can have a more affordable window insert in there. What it does is, typically around those, without property maintenance, you're getting water in past that caulking that's pulled away, and now it's in and it's rotting your sill, and now the water's in, getting down to the steel lintel, and it's into the transom band. It confounds it, right? So if you can get that larger window into that entire area and focus on just one caulk seam around there, it actually in the long run saves money. Improper paints and stains. So I say that because HDTV, they always are wanting to paint brick. Stop it. Don't paint brick. Please don't. If you have to change the color, stain it. That brick needs to breathe. Moisture gets in there, whether it's through the backside or the front side. It has to breathe. You put a regular latex paint job on there, now you're holding the water in there, and now you have brick faces popping off. Or you have the paint just peeling immediately, and then some of it wants to come off and some of it doesn't. And then stains I put on there because, okay, if you're going to stain it, just figure out the original brick color and try and bring it back to that. The slip covers, that's kind of on your storefront assembly. You know, a lot of glass is more inviting for me to come in to your establishment than I am completely closed up except for my door. I don't want you in here. That applies into the infill on storefronts as well. Lintel failure. Most of your buildings across that storefront is going to have a steel lintel or a limestone lintel or a laminated 2x10 by 2x10 by 2x10 by 2x10 spanning across that onto your metal columns. Those can fail over time and they need to be paid attention to, but if you have infill over the front of the transom area, you're not going to be able to tell. And then all the way down to the basement windows and foundations. Back in the day, you needed light, right, in the basement. You didn't want to have to fire up the oil lamp or anything like that. So you had basement windows, which over time just got infilled, but they weren't tied into the rest of that foundation. So if it's going to fail, that footing is in around that window, that's where it's going to fail. So you pay attention to those areas, follow the cracks all the way up to the front of the building. And then foundation tuck pointing. You know, some of these have granite stone foundations. That needs tuck pointing. There's a lot of moisture in a basement that deteriorates that. So this is just an example of one in Jefferson. So absentee ownership's an issue, right? Bank of the West owned this one. They wanted $85,000 for it. It's got a footprint of 2,992 square feet. Had 3 apartments up above. I know those 3 very well because in previous profession, kicked the doors in. It was not a good building. Lots of search warrants. Vacant on the first floor. Okay, talk to Bank of the West. You can see, picture's not the greatest, but it had been painted. You can see in the archways there. Brick infill, right? Transom band, infill. Paint's peeling. Brick faces are popping. Talk to Bank of the West. They decided to sell it to the city for $50. Now it's time to get to work. No business is moving into this. No business is going to want to tackle that amount of expense. That's what I got to deal with. So that parapet back here is about 6 foot tall. But you can see where the roof line is. See that band where all the paint peeled? It's because the roofing gave way and the water came in from the back side. That was leaning across 6 feet over 8 inches. It was about to fall onto the roof. We had to tear it down and build it back. Now you can see the infill up above here, but barely see those arches, and then you can see the windows below. So what they had done is they put a drop ceiling in, and then let's make this window smaller, more energy efficient. It really doesn't look appropriate in that space, but back in the day it made sense. It doesn't now. So that's after we got the parapet built back up. You can kind of see those arches that are still in there a little bit better. Now we're putting our full arch windows back. Get that brick infill out. That's 100% tuck point, with the exception of where those windows are supposed to go. Now we're putting our first story in. It makes a big difference opening up those windows. So, I said don't paint, I painted it. Because I had to paint it. It had been painted before. And if it's not volunteering to come off, you don't pressure wash these brick too hard, because is you take that kiln face off and now it's no longer waterproof. So just lightly power washed, primed, but I picked a color that was as close as I could to the original brick. There it is as we get the storefront tore out. We had to rebuild a few columns here because the front of the building, 40,000 pounds of brick wanted to come out into the street because there was a cast steel column in there that had rusted that we didn't even know about. We took a knee wall out and it shifted 1.5 inches down and over. And the front of the building went, hello. That was not a good Monday morning. Okay? So they're scary. They are scary, even when you have an engineer and architect involved. They're scary. And this, you can't tell, which is nice, but this actually has the storefront glass system in it. So that is where we were at a week ago. As I've been here, this storefront glass assembly has been put in. What's the end game for this? Had we not been doing this, it's just an empty building. Heartland Bank is going to lease this space for $1,500 a month for 2 years while they build a $2.5 million bank out on Highway 4. Okay, we get a little bit of money back, but what that does is it gets bodies in there. Now we're starting to market that building just with bodies that are coming in and out of there. Next door, a co-working space is interested in buying the entirety of the building, using this space as they start up, and then moving over once the bank's out. Had we not taken initiative, there's 2 businesses that would not have been coming to our town. So with zoning requirements, you kind of got to.
What's the cost of something like that?
So the cost on this, right here, right now I'm at about $223,000.
How many square feet is the building?
2,992 square feet.
Did you keep the apartments up above?
So the apartments, I would consider gut rehab, because the reason I was kicking them in is because they were meth labs.
What's your total budget to finish
So
projected?
So what we do is we white box. On the inside, new HVAC, new electrical service, because we're not gonna run wiring to a place if somebody's not gonna use it. The plumbing is stubbed out just to the stack. Heating and cooling, obviously, but it's only on the first floor. We don't do anything with the apartments right now. This one, I'm gonna have probably, by the time we're said and done, about $300,000.
Did you project a return on investment for it, or had you always assumed it would?
We assumed that we would be doing this at a loss.
And what-
Because to tear this and this down, we would have been at $300,000. Because not only do you have to tear it down, asbestos abatement and all of those things, you have a common wall here that you now have to put an exterior face on that was never designed for exterior, right? So instead of taking the money for the tear down, we invest it into the building.
Funding sources?
Funding sources, that was TIF. That's a TIF project, tax increment financing. Zoning requirements. So you gotta kind of take a look at your zoning requirements as well. Allowable uses in your downtown. Storage building, that is not what your downtown is intended for. Your downtown is intended for commerce. It's not for somebody to get a building on the cheap, throw some stuff in it because they don't want it at home, and then never do any maintenance to the building. And then consider design guidelines. So if somebody's going to do repairs, they're appropriate to the building to avoid that infill or that condensing of that window area. So there's a vacant building registry that you can do as well. Absentee ownership is typically one of the biggest problems. And with this, you have to define what's vacant. Vacant's something that's not generally open to the public. You must register if vacant longer than, and that can be set by the city. Okay? Typically, you're going to see 3 months. It's vacant longer than 3 months, they have to register. And then it's subject to inspection that can be set. by the city. What you're gonna see there is probably at 6 months. That way you can get in there and make sure that one drop of water didn't turn into the roof sitting on the second floor. You can make that renewable every, like they say, this is designed so that you can make it work for you. And then there is a fee associated with every inspection. So that Bank of the West, if all of a sudden they decide they don't want to do anything with it, now we have to do this every 3 months and then 6 months, and then now we have a fee on top of this. It gets them motivated to drop that building from 85,000 to whose hands can I get it into? But be careful on that, because that price can get dropped to all of a sudden now you have a storage building. So building codes. Do not adopt any code unless you are willing to enforce it. Can't stress that enough. It's kind of like what we're putting together here today. If this gets put on a shelf, this is all for naught, right? Enact upon it and use it. So there's International Code Council. They have the building code, which is commercial specific. They have the residential code, obviously single family. The existing building code, which would apply to the downtown buildings. Because one of the fears are, if we adopt this code, now I have to bring this building completely up to the 2018 code. That is not the case with existing building code. It allows a few exceptions here and there to work with the conditions of a building that was built in 1863. Property maintenance code, it's also referred to as minimum maintenance code. It's a very important one. You start seeing a little bit of tuck pointing that's needed, and as a city, if there's somebody there to say, you gotta get that tuck pointing to happen. If you don't get that tuck pointing to happen, we can, by law, fix it and lien the property, or we can fine you for not fixing it. It sounds harsh, but what that does is it saves the city from potentially having to tear it down. It saves the city from having to invest $250,000 into a CDBG grant to redo 10 or 13
It
storefronts.
protects all the neighboring buildings.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, because you might have a neighboring building. I see a lot of construction going on downtown, and it's terrific. And if that's right next to one of these vacant buildings that nobody wants to do anything about, that building is bringing the property value of that down to that one that's trying. That's not right, that's not fair. This gives a level playing field. So what's code do? It sets the minimum standard for construction. These codes are the minimum, okay? We say C minus, okay? It levels playing field for contractors, because you have a lot of contractors in this community that are doing things the right way, right? And then you have some that are not, that those contractors have to come back in and fix those issues. And now that individual had to pay for it twice. It addresses life safety issues. That's the biggest thing about the code. You know, it's life safety, the minimum life safety. It sets the bar. You know, it's as high or as low as you choose to make it. Existing building code, kind of touched on that, but it works with current building code and existing buildings to establish life safety matters. I'll wait so you can get your picture of it.
It's easy to try to write it all.
Yeah. So, property maintenance code. I touched a little bit outside of the downtown, and I apologize, but this helps you preserve your existing housing stock. So that dilapidated one sitting next to that beautiful house, it's depreciating their value as well. This allows the city to be able to say, hey, you gotta fix it up. It addresses the blight issues, downtown ones that are working and the ones that are not working. You can say, okay, that cornice needs repaired, let's get it repaired. Oh, you have a window that's about to fall out. I think I saw one chimney on the backside that there were 3 courses of brick gone, that it was getting ready to fall. It prevents minor issues from becoming major problems. Like I said before, get in front of it. Don't let it get to the point where it's out in the street. It addresses responsibility to that property owner. whether it's somebody out in California that has no interest in this building whatsoever, just using it as a tax write-off, or the person that actually lives here. And it helps those that are trying.
So when we are trying to enforce these codes, are there things that we can also share with these people to help them help themselves?
That's at the end. I
Okay.
wanted to have that part.
All right.
So, what to do? Adopt a building code. Never been in a community this size that doesn't have one. Are you gonna be met with resistance? Absolutely. Do I envy the person that would have my job here at the start? No. You have to hire the right person. Somebody that can work with people and say, hey, I know for years and years, but come on, this is the minimum standard. Now, who's tasked with it? Is it city? Is it somebody that they hire from outside of the city? That's up to you guys to decide, and it's up to you guys to decide if you even want it. It's my recommendation, though. It is a minimum standard. Lentil issues. See this? This was part of a CDBG. We get tore into it. The lentil's behind here. Can't see it, but it shifted 3.5 inches this direction and out 2.5 inches. That's what we had to do because we weren't enforcing minimum maintenance. It's what it looks like now, but it took a CDBG to do that.
Where'd you guys come up with the fronts, the facades? Like on that one window that the city bought for $50 or whatever when you redid the front?
What,
The
contractors?
The materials.
The materials?
Is there- Yeah.
So that's
And
aluminum
kind of
and anodized, so
Mhm.
we have
All
Webster
anodized
glass.
aluminum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there companies that specialize in some of these, in providing materials for these older buildings?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's one we got for $100. Business wanted to move in. Black mold, 4 foot tall on the interior. The roof had been leaking for 3 years. Nobody knew about it because we do not have a vacant building register. We wound up having to tackle that one again with TIF. Before, after, challenge grant, city TIF, they got local COG money, their own money, but they live upstairs. That's how that building works. They have secondary income because they don't have a mortgage. They pay for the building and it's also their home. Before and after on their home. Before taxable valuation, 23,000. Now it's at 137. That just increased the city's tax revenue. Right next door, we have fire alleys, so that's not a missing building. We have fire alleys. It separates our blocks so that back in the day, fire departments could get through, and if it caught on fire, it would stop. We turned it into a pocket park. Well, in turning that into a pocket park, we got one on the north side that we're working on now too. State Center, private group, they decided, kind of like the Why Not Us LLC. They're on their 9th building.
All
Just
volunteers.
all volunteers. This one, they decided, let's bring the second story back. So with knuckleheads, I just, not picking on you because you bought somebody else's problems, you're now assuming responsibility, and I applaud you for it. So, limestone lintel, see the crack? So from here up to here, this here's carrying that weight. That has shifted, and it's no longer supported by anything more than this wood that is sitting on top of plate glass. There is wood behind there that's helping support it as well. But this is not a wait for facade program.
It's
This
been
is
that way for 30 years?
you as a property owner, would you want to assume the risk of that popping?
Absolutely not.
And again,
I think this is mine, isn't it?
I hope so.
Oh,
Because I can put it in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. No, I love this stuff, and what's really impressive to me is it's a good business and it's good community sustainability. So It's not just thinking about we're gonna do something about making a building pretty. It makes the pro forma work, it makes the tax revenues work for the city. So it's a very smart strategy, the white boxing, I love it. You've got 2 stars in your downtown, and so pay attention to them. You've got some activity on the theater. Everybody's really excited to find out what's gonna go in behind the black box. And then you've got a strong tenant in the old Masonic building, but again, it's a beautiful building. What's happening with that roof and those structures above it? And so if you look at this drawing, I've really defined downtown as from Cleveland over to just a little bit beyond Ford. That's that 1,000 walking distance. If you go to any district, downtown district, even if you go to a regional shopping mall, people have figured out you'll walk 1,000 feet without saying you've taken a walk. And so that has really defined successful downtowns that are compact and walkable. So even though you've got buildings to the west and to the east, your Main Street really starts and stops where I've shown it. And you've got the 2 stars strategically located. And in the lavender are some strong businesses that are good destinations, but there's a lot of gray that I have to walk between those star buildings and between those star destinations. So really think about how do you support your stars, don't lose them, and then how do you start to infill around them to make a more holistic experience. So I took just the area to the left, east of the old theater building and kind of did some studies. And so right now the first floor is all T111 plywood. The windows have been boarded up. There's multiple doors for residents above, but I can't tell if any of those doors are really being used. And so this illustrates for a group of your buildings how to take some of those principles that Nick was talking about. Open up the transoms, put in the storefront windows. That building has some wonderful, I bet they're cast iron columns, series of them. And it's painted 2 colors, but it's really one building. So go ahead and get it back to the original one building color scheme. I think you need to find a Sherwin-Williams color chip that you would call Anamosa limestone gray. That's kind of a buttery, it's not white. It's not white like in the photograph. It's a buttery kind of gray. I think that's important. And then pay attention to your doorways, to your residents. Give them some love, make them unique. And then I love putting signage between the transom and the storefront. That's that vehicular signage activity. We heard about the selfie or the group photo opportunity on the side of the theater building, which I think is wonderful. So maybe we even think about putting a little plaque there that tells a story of the theater and says, group pictures taken here or something. Make it fun. Make it something I can discover. You have a great texture for your downtown. You have these 20-foot modules, which are really good because we want to experience something new every 20 feet. We get bored otherwise. And your downtown is exceptionally good at this. So think about what happens in every 20-foot bay. This one, the storefront may be destroyed. There was a lot of heavy construction on it. Maybe sometimes you don't put it back totally historic. I just bought a 9-foot patio door and put that in. So it's low cost, high impact, flexible, gives me lots of light. And I got an 8-foot tall one, so I paid a premium for it. But if the historic thing's gone, don't get too hung up over trying to recreate history that you probably can't. What else? I think that hits the high points. Streets and parking. So your streetscape is really impressive. You made a huge investment 15, 20 years ago. Really well done. Look at attention to the clock. The only streetscape I've seen with 2-tone street lights, which I thought, how thoughtful. Really, really cool little detail. Matching furniture, trash cans. There's some benches at some of the intersections, which is a great thing to do. So really applaud you. The bump outs, we are constantly, trying to teach people the benefits of bump outs, and you've done it, and that's great. Even attention to pavers at the crosswalk bump outs. So I think now you're at a point in this life where it just needs some love and tender loving care. So you need to reinvest. Nothing is perfect. Nothing keeps going forever without some maintenance, so, pay attention to where the pavement's settling. And I know plantings have been a challenge for you, so here's some thoughts on the downtown plantings. One, they're incredibly important. They provide shade, color, texture. They're a sign of life. They're moving. There's life here. It's welcoming. All those things you said you want in your downtown. So some things to think about. The locust trees. Locust tree is not a tree that lives a long time, and you've been maintaining and pruning them, but at some point they're going to start declining, and you're going to need to think about replanting those trees, and that's just natural succession. So think about trees that don't have fruit. They have an upright branching so I can walk under them or I can drive a truck under them. It's durable, and slow growing is okay. You don't really want big fast things you have to prune all the time, which is a downside of honey locust, by the way. Hybrid elm, I love. We used to have elm trees in our downtowns, and they have all those characteristics. You have male ginkgos right out here. That's another great selection. London plane tree, the French have planted those all over the world as street trees. They do great. Hackberry, red oak. But don't plant any more crabs. Don't plant pears. Nothing with fruit, nothing that's messy, nothing that has low branches. For the bump outs, I know, again, it's been a maintenance issue. I had a couple examples. This is a project I did. It's gone through 2 winters, Peachtree Brewery, downtown Des Moines, and then this is City Square in the East Village in Des Moines. That's been in there at least 4 winters. And so key is plants that can have snow on top of them, that can handle salts. And so things to think about. Annuals, which I think you've tried recently, I would say has the highest life cycle cost of anything. A lot of maintenance. You're buying those plants. You have to water them. You have to do a lot of stuff. The lowest life cycle cost are shrubs. So that's what you're seeing down here. Things like low-growth sumac, coralberry, chokeberry, they all have those characteristics. Durable, salt-tolerant, and they stay low. But, they're green. They don't have flowers, but that's okay. Everything doesn't have to have flowers. Perennials, it's hard to beat daylily mixes, and I know you see it a lot, and there's a reason why. And they're inexpensive, and they spread, and they push out the weeds, so it's not as much weeding, and they come back every year, and you just replenish them about every 5 to 10 years because they'll start to lose their blooming effect. Another one is grasses. Peachtree Brewery has Carl Forster grasses as well as sedges, so salt tolerant. They look great almost all year. You cut them down in April, and then they come back fresh in the spring. So a parking strategy. You actually do have a parking issue. Most people say they do and they don't, but you do. You don't have much parking, if at all, behind your buildings where we usually see that capacity helps. So one strategy, this is pretty radical, that all it involves is paint, is you've got about 50 feet curb to curb. And right now you have parallel parking, a lane, a turn lane, another lane, and parallel parking. And you could increase your parking by 150% if on one side you put angle parking and then you cut it down to just 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction. And I've driven up and down that street for the past 3 days. I had to turn left once, just because I'm me, I'm trying to explore. But I never saw anybody use a left turn lane. Now, I'm sure people do, but I don't think it's a high demand thing. By taking out the left turn lane, you're slowing traffic down. We like that. We want people to see our businesses. We want them to go slow. That makes it safe for pedestrians. So it's all things we really promote in our downtowns. So with some restriping, you pick up from 28 spaces, for instance, in one block area, you'll kick it up to 42 spaces. And this shows Nick's idea of getting that light through the transom. It's really important, and the light on the display window. And then here's an example of when I was saying if you've lost your old historic storefront, you might even think about rebuilding a new one back about 8 feet. and that allows you some opportunity for outdoor merchandising or outdoor dining, and that's always a kind of a popular surprise on the downtown. Your mind's going, oh my gosh, he just took out our left turn lane? We're gonna angle parking? So it's not, it's just paint.
It's just paint.
It's just, you have to paint it anyway, it's about faded. In fact, there's a good weekend project, is getting some paint and paint the crosswalks really bright and bold.
If you've tried to walk across your street here, it wouldn't hurt to slow people down.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. And your traffic
It's a
volumes-
racetrack.
Yeah, they are zooming pretty good, and the volumes aren't that high, they really are.
20-mile-an-hour speed limit, it's great.
That's what the sign says.
The sign says, yeah.
An idea for your alley, I mean, there are some, instead of having the dumpster sitting in such a way that I can maybe get 1 or 2 cars in a space, if you just kind of do some reconfiguration and cooperation, I think you'll find you can pick up some spaces in those alleys and those little nooks that are left over around the buildings. So that's kind of cheap, low-hanging fruit. You might want to make the alleys a one-way system to help some of that issue. And then we did notice you're kind of unique. A lot of your buildings have a single story on the back side, so if you want a high-quality renter, they want outdoor space, it's pretty easy. You're doing roofing just to put that deck on the back side. Let's see here. Parking, oh, okay, so you can see where you pick up a bunch of parking here by going angled. Also, your side streets, especially that one, are good targets for going angled parking and picking up quantity. The parking behind the Masonic Temple where the storage yard is, if you can renegotiate that deal and get another 20 feet, you would double the amount of parking and it'd be much more usable. And they're not using a fraction of that square footage, so easier said than done as an outsider, but think about it. I put in red vulnerable buildings, knuckleheads, some others, the one in the corner here has got all sorts of things happening down low that are scary, so think about being proactive with your vulnerable buildings before it's too late. I love this building, by the way, up here, that warehouse building. I like it because of the size, configuration, and location for it. I've put 55 plus apartments. That gets you a certain demographic. They can walk downtown, energize your downtown. And from the outside, it looks like that'd be a pretty easy conversion. Maybe the bank can share their parking with some accessible stairs there. I don't know. It's an idea. I may be getting ahead of myself, Jeff, but it's up here, so we can come back. Jeff discovered, I should have seen it as well, the lawn just north of the post office. That's a wonderful potential public park. I don't know who controls it, if it's the feds or whoever, but just some addition of seating and shade and some walkways, that's a really great location. In fact, that street from City Hall up to Main then could be closed for special events, and that's a wonderful sort of place to have festivals. Jeff?
Thanks, Dennis. So, I actually grew up in Comanche, not too far away, town about similar size, 4,400 people. Great place to grow up, but I'm envious of your downtown. We don't have a downtown. In 1860s, tornado took ours out. We don't have one. Our downtown was in Clinton. You've got one here with great building stock, great streetscape already in place, a lot of wonderful amenities. So we're going to talk about, just here briefly, how to make downtown an experience. You want to make going downtown an experience, make it a destination, is what we heard several times in the surveys. We heard several times in the focus groups as well. So what can we do to draw people downtown, create that welcoming, inviting, bustling type of atmosphere that you told us you were interested in? And a lot of it just comes down to paying attention to details. And we've probably heard a lot about details already. And some of these things, can be quick and pretty inexpensive. So we're going to group it into these sort of categories. Just talk about the street life, the pedestrian experience, some opportunities for storytelling and incorporating public art, looking at some additional events, how to capitalize on an event you have, and then just making a downtown a place that's inviting for all ages. We just
I
talked
think I
about that
covered
one.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and that one.
I think so.
So first of all, let's talk about how do we make it inviting, welcoming. And Dennis already touched on the streetscape and the great amenity that it is for you with the bump outs, the plantings, and so forth. Just a little detail, some enhancements you can do to what you already have. You have benches, but maybe there should be more of them, and we can look at where they're strategically placed. Plantings, I was here in October, the plantings are beautiful, but now there aren't any plantings downtown. Is there something we can do with planters? Perfect little example in front of White Picket. Right now, I just took a picture of yesterday. You've got some great examples already of telling me as a pedestrian or a motorist, I'm open for business. So do more of those kind of things. And then think about some of those other customers out there, our little four-legged friends. This is an example where just a business has set out a little thing of dog biscuits and a little watering bowl. Dennis has Mr. Cotton here with him these last few days, and they're out walking downtown. Is there a place for Mr. Cotton to get a drink as well? Public art. You've got several examples of public art in the community. You've got this wonderful mural in the corner. So it's a little faded at this point. There was this great student integration project of art. It's a little hidden back in the alley, but it was a great idea to try and add some color to that fence that's there. But maybe there's some ways to make that more visible. Just one idea. Dennis is really the design guy, but one of the things I noticed walking around is you have a lot of these boxes that I think are controlling the street lighting. There's almost some on every corner. I probably took photos of about 10 of them. Maybe those become a canvas for art, and maybe again it's that art featuring some of the Grant Wood landscapes.
And that can be 3M films. That doesn't have to take talent.
Yeah,
It's it's printed on something and shh.
yeah. There are companies who make just artistic wraps for utility boxes, just like that.
Oh, and this was just an idea. You've got a lot of these little residential doors all along your main street. Just pay attention to them and make them special. Make it kind of fun. Oh, this one's painted bright green, or this one's got a little saying on it. Anything to make it personal. Again, give me something fun to discover every 20 feet.
Yeah, it's that every 20-foot experience kind of thing. And you've got a lot of great residential doors that I noticed too, walking in a couple of neighborhoods. You could have a whole Doors of Anamosa tour thing going on. When you talk about public art, just don't think about murals, paintings, sculptures. Think about live arts, performance arts. This was one in Preston just a few weeks ago. These folks were actually your music students at the local school there, the community college. They were just out providing some entertainment on the streetscape, or on the street, and people really enjoyed that and livened things up. Give you something to walk down and see what's going on there. Dennis mentioned this art piece before. We're talking about signage and entryways. It's a great piece. We think it's kind of on the edge of downtown, but we wanted to mention it here so we didn't forget. Maybe just planting some evergreens behind it to create a nice little backdrop that would help show off the art even more. It would be a simple little weekend project to put in place. Storytelling. So we had a wonderful opportunity yesterday. Dennis and I did, and Mr. Cotton.
Yeah.
We went into the high school and we met with about a dozen of the students. And then we had about 18 of the faculty and staff members because it was an early out day. And the students were really excited and really optimistic about the community and its future. And they really kind of focused in on telling the story of Anamosa and its history. So just think about how you might integrate storytelling of that history, talking about your Anamosa stone or Grant Wood, whatever the stories are you may want to tell. But there's some simple ways you could do it. This is a great little example next to City Hall. There's a great house just to the south, one of those little libraries there, and on the side they have the history, who has lived in that home. Or here's an example, Jefferson, where they have history of the building on there, but maybe not just the history of the building. Tell us what's happened in that building. Make it a storytelling. And the students were like, we could have a run or a walk around Anamosa to all the different historic sites, or maybe it's like a historic site scavenger hunt kind of opportunity.
That's a great idea.
And then they really talked about events as another way to create that downtown experience, to make it engaging. They like Pumpkin Fest. they really liked, and I don't know if I got the name right, but the A-Town Get Down that you had just over here earlier this summer. We really wanted to see more of those. And they talked about what makes a great event. They wanted to see more parades. One idea they had is we have a lighted Christmas parade, maybe we can have a lighted tractor parade sometime throughout the year. They went on a whole idea about a corn-related festival. The students were really into your agricultural heritage in our discussion with them. You know, everything from corn picking to shucking to bobbing for corn to, they even had ideas of some sort of dog herding kind of thing.
Mr. Cotton was influencing them.
Yeah, instead of running of the pigs down Main Street or the bulls, or some dog
and goats.
herding kind of a thing. So you'll have all of these notes that Dennis took and drew, and the students provided in the report as well. And the students are like, even if we could just have a large community Christmas tree somewhere in the downtown, and we think that might be a possibility by Bamboo Garden or White Picket, somewhere there, so when you come up to this corner, you see it, and it makes you want to go left towards downtown. Again, I just want to bring you back to this from the survey at the very beginning, where it was pretty evident people wanted to have more places for youth downtown. The youth were very engaged. They want to do things downtown. So we went through a little exercise with them. What might those things look like? And you've just heard about some of the outdoor types of things. But they also talked to us about an indoor space. And this is a space where, you know, they go to school, they get out of school, and then they're going to play practice, band practice, sports practice, whatever it might be. But when they get done with that, they really are interested in a place they could gather, study groups, have coffee, pop, some snacks, relaxing furniture. This was just kind of sketches we did with them, just little Adirondack chairs, a harvest table, a little coffee kind of vending cart kind of thing. They talked about how they might even be able to do it through silver cord hours in their entrepreneurial class. And maybe they run this little center. I don't know, I haven't come up with a good name for it yet.
Build the furniture.
Yeah, build the furniture in the, through the classroom as well. But this is something that maybe if it was in a storefront downtown, maybe it's one of the ways to fill those vacant storefronts. It's lit up at night, you can look in there and see what activity is going on, or their friends are going downtown, they see their friends are in there. The opportunity to bring more of that age demographic to the downtown. And I just threw some of these up, kind of examples like the Adirondack chair and the harvest table we talked about. It could be very easy projects with your building trades or industrial trades class. Or even something like this, there's a group called Better Block. This is a wiki block. It's basically, they have all these designs. You can put a 4x8 sheet of plywood into a wood CNC router, cuts out all the pieces. It's already designed for you. And then they just snap together and you've got a coffee kiosk. So it's just lots of different ways to approach that, and I could talk about it a lot more, but I know our time is running late, so
Yeah.
there'll be more in the report.
No, I'm gonna talk really, really fast. Communication is key. Unless you enhance your communication, you're gonna continue down this path of people being in the dark. And that's what we heard of so many times. We heard, I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe, I think so, possibly. They just don't know what the heck's going on, but they wanna know what's going on. So you need to share. And you need to do this often and often and often and often. You need to tell the stories, share the facts, inform people of what's going on, celebrate things that are happening. Some ways we can do that are the typical newsletters, articles in the newspaper, be on the radio, Facebook all the time. All of these need to be a mixture of it because not everybody does Facebook, not everybody reads the newspaper. Mix and match it. We heard about having equipment on the streets. The businesses suddenly having this big truck in front of their place are going, what's going on? A simple communication of maybe even whoever's running the truck or the company or maybe it's staff. Pop into the businesses on either side and say, hey, guess what? We got progress happening. We got things going on. Good stuff. There's going to be a truck in front of your business for maybe like 2 days. They just want to know what's going on rather than going, oh, what's that truck doing out in front? My customers can't get my front door. They just want to hear what's going on. We got together with a lot of groups and we found out those groups would probably like to get together again, maybe once or twice a year. The restaurant people, the retail, the service, they kind of see each other, but they're so busy in their own business that they don't have a chance to talk. And just sometimes talking together and finding out we're in the same boat is just reassuring. It's just kind of nice to know. Have an after 5 event. Different businesses. Maybe it's the first Friday of every month. Well, maybe not because of football and basketball games. But pick a time, and after 5 o'clock, you gather at a business. Somebody supplies hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and just chat. Maybe have a 5-minute little speech about this is what's happening in our town. This is what's coming up. High school. We saw how engaged they want to be. I think we need to not just meet them once when we come to town. Make that a regular thing, once or twice a year. Pick their brains, find out what they want and need. Business visits, we need both staff people visiting all the businesses, so again, people know what's going on. They have somebody to ask questions to, but also a peer-to-peer. We recommend that businesses come up with a little task force and you visit the businesses on a regular basis. Build those relationships so that when I ask a question, sometimes I don't want to talk to a staff person. I want to talk to my neighboring business person because they're trying to make a living just like I am. So having those people visiting businesses enhances that communication. Staff, they need to get together. You know, it's the Derek, it's the Leanna, it's Jacob. Meeting maybe once a month, just talking, and they might already be doing that. But these are all parts and pieces of your communication. And celebrating successes. Whether it's something as simple as somebody having a brand new awning to a new business, celebrate. Let people see that this is an exciting moment. Communicate that success. Marketing, we noticed some brochures, coupon books, different things, but you know what? None of them had Anamosa. We saw Maquoketa, Monticello, Dubuque. Yeah, Amana. Nothing about Anamosa. There was some stuff in the hotel room in our 3-ring binder notebook, but some of it was beautiful looking, but a lot of it was outdated. So you're not promoting yourselves. Your website, keeping that current and up to date. Cooperative marketing events. You know, do you have a time where you really promote all the restaurants you have in town? Maybe it's a special week, maybe it's a special day. You've got a lot of dining options that we think, even though you want additional, those regulars that you have, a lot of the locals don't even go in there. They've never shown their face. They don't even know what's on the menu. And my gosh, as you've heard, we've all gained 5 pounds each before we're leaving town. And then of course, you know, spending an afternoon. I do that with my girlfriends all the time. You've got it. I can come here, have a cup of coffee, do some shopping. Eat lunch, do some more shopping. Have a drink, do some more shopping. I can do that in this town. You've got it, but we need to tell people about it. And then you have those additional tourism opportunities that not everybody has. You've got those art galleries and museums, the things that you can mix in between all of that shopping and eating and drinking. But we need to know about it. Communication, each one of you has a little card like this. Communication, being informed, that's partly what we need to do. If you go onto this website, you're going to become informed about different ideas and opportunities that you can link yourself into. Okay.
Anamosa, you are always going to get the downtown you deserve. You guys get that? Does everybody understand? This downtown is what you've created. When you love your town, it shows every day. Every day. And if you don't love this town, life is way too short. You need to go find a town you do love. Let people live here that love this place. Because you want to give back to this place. It's a wonderful town. We rolled into town and saw all the opportunities. What we heard for 2.5 days were all the problems. Time to take advantage of your opportunities. Ways you can do that. If you leave this report on a shelf that collects dust, that's on you. You guys, right? We looked at 2002. We looked at 2010. These are good reports that appear to us that nothing happened. time to implement. We want to work with you to create local incentives, and then we want you to partner with progressive property owners. If they own property and they don't want to do anything with it, move on. Create code and work through minimum maintenance, but move on. Work with the yeses and maybes and forget about the no's for right now. You have way too many good things going for you. So an implementation team. This has to be people with an attitude of getting work done. If they want to talk about all the issues, they need to go on a different committee. Okay? So the city, we really think 2 people from the city, 2 people from Jones County Economic Development, 2 from the chamber, and then decide how many active property owners, 1 or 2, that you want in there, typically ones that are not going to take advantage of incentives. You don't want to create conflict of interest and all those kinds of things, okay? You have others that may need to be involved. Hometown Pride, A-Town Get Down. We really love this. Expand that. That's something to really rally around. This is good stuff. We have lots of incentives that we can help you with. Lots more than I could put on a slide. I do those trainings all over the state. We'd love to do it. Some of your citizens were at the downtown conference and heard me go through all this. We have lots more than this. We're not going to invite ourselves back. We won't force you to ask us to help. But if you ask us, we want to connect. You're talking about a downtown revitalization process through community development block grants. One thing that's critical that you have to understand, there's today projects and tomorrow projects. Your block grant process that you're considering is a tomorrow process. The grants are due to us at the Economic Development Authority in April of 2020. It's not likely that you will swing a hammer until spring of 2021. Do you get that? That's a tomorrow project. But that doesn't mean there aren't other things that you could do. We've created a new program that will be open around January. It's for an upper story housing project. We did 4 pilots with that. It's working. It's exactly like the Downtown Revitalization Fund. It's $500,000. Generally speaking, to be competitive, the city has to provide $250,000, city and partners, and property owners collectively need to put in $250,000. Now, I'm the numbers nerd, one on our team, but think about that. If I'm a property owner and I put in $1, I receive 3 to go with it. Right? You're going to get things done here in a hurry. We've done like 54 towns now with the Downtown Revitalization Fund. Not a new program, you guys. It needs to happen here. Workforce housing tax credits. They're available now, okay? These are things that if you're going to do a subdivision, which we saw, and you're going to do 4 or 5 homes, that's all you have to have for an application. You get tax credits for those developers.
Use it upstairs too.
And you can use it upstairs, yeah. I'm the grant administrator for the Community Catalyst Building Remediation Program. You have an emergency project here. The Wortmans, Casey and Doug, that was after the fire. That was how we were able to breathe life back into that. That building could have been gone and you could have had a missing tooth, right? There's another program, Nuisance Property and Abandoned Building. It's not a grant, it's a revolving loan fund, but we have dollars set aside, $2.6 million, that you, the city, can apply for, low interest money, to be able to work toward building projects.
Is that residential and commercial?
Yes, and in some cases, I'm glad you said that, some communities have used this to remove dangerous and dilapidated homes, because those are a liability. They're only an asset when they're gone, and you can use that program for that. So historic tax credits, state and federal, you guys can work on those today. Iowa has one of the most aggressive state historic tax credits in the nation, 25% reimbursable grant. It's not an investment tax credit, it's a reimbursable grant, 25% of your project. Cool. Now, these are local. So I said today and tomorrow projects, you have to get serious about using the tax increment financing district that you already have. It exists today. We asked Jacob, what's your increment? He's not sure. He's going to find out. We got to know. How much money do you have available? When Nick and the city of Jefferson started reinvesting in these buildings, that's the funding source they used. Not general fund, which is really, really strapped in a lot of communities. They used increment that they've already created. When you do this in a downtown district, all these buildings are zero property line development. So everything is tax producing, right? Think about it. Your downtown properties, even in the condition they are today, some of them, are subsidizing single-family detached homes. They're subsidizing what we enjoy because downtown, if it's valued at $100,000, there's a 10% rollback, you pay taxes like it's $90,000. If you live in a home that's valued at $100,000, residential, you pay taxes like it's valued at $55,000. Get the difference? These buildings, if reinvested, will subsidize the rest of the community. No other property in town can do that. None. So we want to figure out, when you use tax increment financing, what's the appropriate debt service? Do developers need the money up front, or can you do annual rebates? Now, what's cool about Iowa now, if you have a 2-story building, you could use TIF on the first floor, and the best housing program I've ever seen in my career, create an urban revitalization district. It's a consolidated abatement for historic buildings in your downtown. You're eligible to create that district that allows 10 years, 100% abatement. It freezes it at its current level, so it doesn't hurt the school, it doesn't hurt the county, it doesn't hurt the city, but we're forcing development. When they go off of the abatement schedule, consolidated abatement, everybody wins. It's easy from a city council decision. I don't have to create money. I'm just not going to collect it for a while if you do this project. That's easy to sell, right? The other thing, urban revitalization. What's one of the biggest problems with housing in the state of Iowa, especially rural communities? Owner-occupied substantial rehab. We have lots of programs for people that are income eligible. We don't have anything for people that are just, I make too much money to qualify. But if you did an owner-occupied substantial rehab, you get the choice of deciding what you're going to do for them. So, what if my mom's 87 years old, she lives in a 2-story detached that's not safe for her to be in. She doesn't go upstairs, she doesn't go in the basement. We clean those on holidays. If we have an age-appropriate home that she could move to, consider moving to, what we could do is say, so why isn't somebody wanting to buy her home? It hasn't been improved for 40 years. So empty nesters and millennials, young professionals, they won't even consider those homes, right? They can't see what it's going to be. We could do an owner-occupied substantial rehab and say, Mom, if you invest $30,000, that's what we're saying is substantial rehab, we'll freeze your assessed value at what it is today for 5 years. If you sell it within that 5 years, it does not transfer to a new owner. It goes right on the full boat levy, okay? Now, is mom gonna make a few extra bucks? Yeah, but we, as a community, just reinvested in brick and mortar. When cities invest in brick and mortar, you always get a return on investment. Sometimes short term, sometimes long term, but you're gonna get a return on investment. Why wouldn't you consider something like that? It works with new construction, works with upper story. We want you to create local facade improvement grants today because those are today projects. You cannot wait for the block grant dollars, okay? So if you know you have to put $250,000 into the block grant match, that's later, that's tomorrow. Why not include $250,000 today? You're gonna be working on the budget right away. You hardly have any debt here. It's time to reinvest in yourselves. The other thing we love is when you create revolving loan funds or loan guarantees that require them to do projects with local banks. They are your partners. We gotta figure out how to drive more business and keep it home. Mini grants is a way to do it. Nick and Jeff and Dennis all talked about little signage things and things like that. Create mini grants. This is one of the ugliest buildings I've ever worked on. This is how simple mini grants can be. Now, a storefront system, that's not a mini grant, but you start adding windows and signage, lighting, those could all be a priority for the year that you decide. Make it first come, first serve. When the money's gone, it's gone. If people don't apply for it, maybe we picked the wrong item. This is something, so Nick and I are involved in the governor's Empower Rural Iowa Housing Task Force. This is a program that Iowa State is begging us to give them names of towns that want to make housing better in a rural community. The Rural Housing Readiness Assessment. If this town's serious about getting better with housing and you'll create a housing task force and do some work, we want your name. But I'm not going to submit your name until somebody tells me, yes, Anamosa is interested in this and we'll do our work. This is one, and I'm done after this, that any commercial property has a built-in incentive through the IRS to make their properties handicap accessible. This has been around 30 years. Tax preparers need to know about this. We're finding in our travels that they don't. So here's the way this works. You're in Tyler and Downey and they need to rehab the men's and women's restroom. It's pretty easy to spend real dollars on restrooms, okay? If you spend $10,000, you get a credit, not a deduction, a credit from the IRS every calendar year. So if you do 2 restrooms, men's and women's, always do the women's first, always, always. If you did that like in October, and you spent $10,000, you get a $5,000 credit through Form 8826. You also get a deduction. I would love to come back and talk to you about how all this works. But then in March, if you're going to do the men's, you can apply again. If you don't spend $10,000, you only spend $5,000, now you get a $2,500 credit, 50% of the money you invest. And that works with grab bars, ramps, doesn't apply to residential. ADA requirements generally don't apply to residential. It's for commercial use with public access. You have buildings that need this. Go to work, make people proud that you live here. Because if you want to find reasons to complain, we'll find them all day. We're ready to go to work, okay? So, thank you. I'm sorry we ran over. We'll stick around for questions. I'll understand if you have to leave. You can ask any of us.
Is there a link or something for this PowerPoint?
We're going to send it to Jacob, and Derek will get it to you too. We'll send it to you so you have it.
How will we get a copy of it?
Just ask them.
From them? Oh, okay.
Yes, I think that's a great test of communication. Derek, if you drop this ball, that's on you.
And there's a report.
Yeah, the report will be in about 4 or 5 weeks. We're concerned about the holidays being in there, so we're not exactly sure. But we're going to get it to you. Usually that we will be able to drill down much deeper into all these things. This was a quick overview. Sorry, not so quick. But that would give you all the information. And what Darlene said, we want to work with you, but we're not going to beg you. So they love it when I say this stuff. I'm always somewhere. It just may not be here.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I just want to say, like Darlene and Jim both said, we do want to work with you, and one of the things we're interested in is knowing who wants to work with us. So if you have some skills, talents, time, interest in helping improve downtown, we'd be interested in knowing that information, and we'll make that available to Jacob and Derek as well. So as the community decides on some projects, we need some volunteer help on something, we have a group to start with. So if you're interested in that, that would be great. We've collected about a dozen of those, I think, at the first community meeting, and it would be nice to add some more people to that group of interested parties. Thanks.
So please reach out to us.
I got a couple questions for you and Nick. On the grants and all them programs, kind of touched on this before, but one of my things is accountability. So the people get the money, lack of someone in code enforcement.
Sure.
There's basically no accountability. They can do kind of what they want, build how they want, structure how they want, and no one ever sees it.
No, that's not true.
So I guess what I'm saying is, do you guys go in? or
Absolutely.
Will anybody ever go in and check and see how the progress is being
So,
done and what the quality of work is?
I am not a code official, okay? But when there's a lack of code in a local level, it always defers to the state. And so when we give a catalyst grant or a block grant or other kinds of things, there is a mechanism for us to ensure that the projects are appropriate. Now, like any code, do we miss something once in a while? Possibly, but there is a mechanism in place. Most of the grants we're talking about, the city must be the applicant. So if the city won't partner with private building owners, you can't apply. Okay?
And for the upper story housing and community facility types of projects, we actually have a set of sustainable design guidelines that we apply to those projects called the Iowa Green Streets criteria. And some of that actually has a third-party verification process to it as well.
Also, maybe you can answer this. So in the parapet walls, firewalls on the roofs, do you guys allow roofs to go over roofs and cover that? Or do they have to transition and stop?
We allow it,
You do allow it.
specifically for the reason that if you have that seam there, that's right where the water is gonna go. So, you know, like I say, the roof comes up the parapet and terminates. We bring it up the parapet, wrap it over, even if it's on the front face, give it a nice decorative metal fascia across it. But water follows gravity.
Yep.
So, yep,
Cause we just did the one between our building and the neighboring building, we brought it up, back up to 3 foot, brought the chimneys back up, capped everything so we could come up and put drip edges on so the water would run off and down. Do you guys allow steel on the roofs?
I can't prevent it, and I would never recommend it.
Yeah, it's
The
bad.
thing with steel is, you know, you
Tracks.
have a fire.
Yeah, talk to the
How do you
fire
chase it?
department.
Okay,
They hate them.
do you guys have, like, and maybe someone here can clarify me, but I think in the codes here, I know there's difference between residential and commercial, but if I understand correctly here, if you do something on your house that is close to the property line, you have to meet National Fire Code, where my understanding is downtown, in the commercial area, you don't. Which I think is kind of counterproductive, because if you have a fire in one building, and they just travel through building to building, anytime you have something open, do you guys require them to?
Yes, I mean, we don't require permits for our interior improvements, but with your zero setbacks, so you have that common wall.
Yep.
Right, so yes, we do require that. There might, I don't know how your ordinances read here. You're talking about setbacks essentially. In a single-family area, you're gonna have a 6-foot side or a 30-foot front and rear. And at a zero lot line, with zoning, it's not gonna address code, right? So I don't know how you're structured.
So maybe you guys could talk about